Welcome into One of One Sports. Just 4 years ago, the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA championship, defeating my favorite team, the Phoenix Suns. Those 4 years feel like an eternity now, and Milwaukee's season has just completely unraveled. Damian Lillard has torn his Achilles, and it seems more likely than ever that their time with Giannis Antetokounmpo has come to an end, and more likely that he will be traded this offseason. Now, it's not a certainty, but if he were to be traded at just 30 years old and at the peak of his powers as a top 2 or 3 player in the league, he would be one of the most coveted trade assets of all time, really. And pretty much every team in the league would be looking to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. So with that being said, that's exactly what we're doing in today's video, and we're seeing what a trade package would look like for every single team if they were to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. No matter how ridiculous or unlikely it may seem, every team is in this video, and we'll go through all of them in sort of these tiers. And what's important to remember when we're going through this, in terms of, yes, Milwaukee's going to want to get picks and young players as you typically do in these star trades, but also Milwaukee does not own their next 5 years worth of picks, right? So they can't really tank, and they don't have like a motivation to just completely bottom out. You want to still be somewhat good. So keep that in mind as we go into it. And the first tier I have is just know these are trades that maybe they're interesting, maybe they're fun to think of, but these trades cannot happen. And I wanted to start with my Phoenix Suns and what is virtually a Kevin Durant for Giannis Antetokounmpo swap. You also give them Ryan Dunn, really our only young asset, and our last remaining first round pick. On the Sun side, you would pair Giannis with Devin Booker, which would be fun. You still probably wouldn't be great, but you'd be better, you would think. And the Bucks, you stay relevant with Kevin Durant. But yeah, you just don't really get any young assets for the future. You don't get picks back, and you get like 1 year Kevin Durant. This trade makes no sense for Milwaukee. It's not happening. Next up, similar thing with the Los Angeles Lakers. You get LeBron James and Austin Reeves, so like a slightly better young player and maybe a better pick because it's in 2031. But for all the same reasons as the Suns trade, in addition to the Lakers probably aren't going to trade LeBron James, and the Bucks certainly aren't going to trade away Giannis for Austin Reeves and like 1 more year of LeBron. This trade obviously not going to happen. The Dallas Mavericks, really the only way this is like better than the others because it's 4 first round picks. And Dallas first round picks are going to be pretty valuable, you would think, especially the 2031 one. So there's something there, but really Anthony Davis nowhere near Giannis at this point in his career and way more injury prone. Now maybe if Nico Harrison was the GM of the Bucks, he would make this trade because he seems to just love Anthony Davis so much. But other than that, there's really no way this happens and no way to salvage the Mavericks after trading Luka Doncic. The Indiana Pacers, this one, actually not a terrible deal. And I should mention, I only put first round picks in the trade. Like pick swaps and second round picks can obviously be thrown in, but I didn't want to make the screen look completely crammed. So only the first round actual picks are included for most of these. Maybe for some, I included pick swaps if they're important. But yeah, you can imagine for a lot of these, there's also going to be the swaps of the years in between and then seconds thrown in. But Pascal Siakam and Benedict Mathurin, two good players. The Bucks would remain somewhat decent, and you get a couple picks. But on top of this not being a great package, it's a fine package. I don't think that the Bucks are looking to trade their star player to the team that's kind of ending their assuming the Pacers eliminate them in this series, as pretty much everyone thinks they will. And there's just some bad blood between these teams that I don't think it's going to happen. Next up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, which is actually somewhat interesting because their 2031 pick you would think would be super valuable. Their 2028 LA Clippers pick has the potential to be pretty valuable. Jared McCain could have won Rookie of the Year, and then Paul George it's a bad contract, but he's at least an okay player at this stage of his career. But you get two really valuable picks and Jared McCain. I still don't think that's obviously going to be enough, but it's at least interesting. And this 2025 pick could be like a top 3 pick. So you could imagine, say Philly jumps up to like 3 or 4, and this is Ace Bailey, Jared McCain, two really valuable first round picks, plus Paul George just for the money. There's something interesting about that. And then Philly, Embiid comes back, and you have Giannis, and you have Tyrese Maxey. Kelly Oubre maybe comes back, and you have the semblance of another exciting year in Philadelphia where they trade for a superstar, hoping things go differently. I at least think it's fun to think about, and maybe there's another tier later. I almost put this in. This is what I'm interested to let for you guys to comment on. Like, is there any possible way Milwaukee's interested in this one? Because I think it's the most realistic of this tier. Next up is it just doesn't make sense. This is maybe you have enough to get him, like if you were to give it up, but maybe it doesn't fit the timeline of a young team, or maybe there's money issues, or maybe Giannis wouldn't want to go there, things like that. So first up, the Washington Wizards, and there'd be more picks involved, and Bilal Coulibaly is nice, and AJ Johnson I threw in because the Bucks traded him to the Wizards, but they clearly liked him as a young player enough to draft him. And there's other like Keyshawn George could be thrown in, but unless you're throwing in like Alex Sarr and this year's pick, you're probably not going to have enough. And then if you do throw that in, it's probably enough, but then you have nothing left on your roster except Giannis, and it doesn't make sense for the Wizards to make a trade like this. In addition, Giannis doesn't want to go to the Wizards. Next up, Charlotte Hornets, and it's pretty similar, but a better package. And you get Saloon, who was a top 5-6 pick. Brandon Miller, I think, has a lot of upside. 3 picks, which from Charlotte have the potential to be really good. And you kept this year's pick in the trade. So say that's like, I don't know, VJ Edgecombe or something, maybe even Cooper Flag, and you pair LaMelo, Giannis, and a top 3 pick with like Mark Williams. There's something there that's fun, but ultimately it's a stretch to say that this would happen, but it's a little more realistic than the Wizards. Makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, probably not going to happen, but Charlotte fans can dream. Next up, the Chicago Bulls, who you give up like your best young asset in Modest Buzelis, and then just a haul of picks, but then you're left with this team that's like Kobe White. You maybe bring Josh Giddey back, Giannis, and like there's not much there to work with. Like you have one of the best players in the league, but nothing doesn't surround him, and you're basically just where Milwaukee is, and you're out of picks. So probably it just doesn't make sense for you to give this up if you don't have enough to surround Giannis and compete right away. That's why it's in the doesn't make sense tier. And that's the end of the tier. And now we move on to you just don't have enough. Like you'd love to bring in Giannis. It would be great for your franchise. Obviously, he's a great player. But realistically, your package just can't get it done. And starting off, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, who could give up James Harden or Kawhi. I went with James Harden because I think he's maybe more valuable as a trade asset. The contract is shorter, and you would have to do a kind of sign and trade, because he could opt out of his player option this summer. But I don't think you want the Kawhi contract on the books with the injury risk there. And then you get Zubac, who's a really good player, Cam Christie, who knows, and then a couple picks which aren't gonna. Whether the last one could be good, but the OKC one's terrible. There's just no way this is all Milwaukee could get for Giannis. So yeah, not happening. Then Golden State, you'd have to give up Draymond Green. I mean, there's a trade of this where it's like a Jimmy Butler and picks, but I don't see Milwaukee doing that. And you get Draymond Green, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, Podziemski, and then 2 picks. Like maybe there's a Kuminga sign-in trade thrown in here, but his value is pretty much tanked. And like the best young asset you're getting is Podziemski. The team wouldn't even be that good. Like it doesn't even keep them that relevant, and the picks would be mediocre at best, because next year's pick, you imagine the Warriors would be great if they had Steph Curry, Jimmy, and Giannis. So like for the Warriors, yeah, obviously you'd love this, but yeah, Milwaukee's not doing this. Then the Minnesota Timberwolves, you could go with something around Gobert, but I think if they're going to have any chance, you'd have to go Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, and your 2 first-round picks from this year, Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., and really the only pick you give up is a Detroit first-round pick this year, which is not great. So realistically, not enough picks to give up. The young assets aren't the best. And yeah, you'd love to pair Ant with Giannis Antetokounmpo, but unless you're giving up Anthony Edwards, you're not getting Giannis in Minnesota. Next up, the Sacramento Kings. And here, Domantas Sabonis would definitely keep the Bucks relevant, as he is a great a great regular season player. And Keegan Murray is fine. And then you give up, a bunch of I don't think one of those I think is maybe a swap by accident, because you can't give up back-to-back picks in 26 and 27. So I'm not sure what that's about. I think it'd just be 3 first-round picks. I apologize for the error there. But other than that, like just that's not enough picks, and it's not a good enough package. Like even if you try to throw up like in is it Devon Carter or Devin Carter? I forget. There's just not really that much young assets on the Kings to get a player like Giannis, and yeah, he doesn't want to go to Sacramento. Then the Miami Heat, who I think this one's going to be thrown about as like a realistic option, but I just don't see it happening. Like you can give up the Warriors first this year, which isn't great, and two future first, which is fine. And Bam's a good player, but like Jovic and Hawkes, I mean, you could give up Kalel Ware in here and add in, but even then, like those aren't the best young players in the league. Like Hawkes barely plays for them. Jovic hasn't done a ton, and Bam's just so far off from what Giannis is that I don't think the Bucks. I think they could for sure get more than this, and Miami will try. They'll offer it, but it's not going to be enough. And now we get into tier three, which these ones have virtually no chance of happening, unrealistic, but they are very fun, at least to me, to think about. And this one was the most fun I had making a trade, and that is the Denver Nuggets give up Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, and the remaining picks they have to the Bucks. They then trade Jamal Murray to the Magic to acquire players back to fill their roster, as you can see in KCP, Cole Anthony, Goga Badadze. Tristan Da Silva, young player, goes to the Bucks, and then two more picks go to it. So it's a lot, and it's really hard to make three-team trades. Like for the Magic, you give up like Caldwell Pope. I think you're fine giving up his contract with how he played this year. It wasn't great. Cole Anthony sometimes is barely even playing. You have a lot of bigs in Wagner, Wendell Carter, Isaac. I think you're fine to move up Badadze. And Tristan Da Silva, yes, you liked him drafting him, but he hasn't done a ton. So the players are fine. And then two picks, one of which was Denver's this year, which isn't great. I think you're fine to give up. Like I think that's reasonable for Jamal Murray because the players aren't great. And then Denver, you're for sure doing this, I think, or at least maybe not, but I think to just pair Jokic and Giannis. Like I'm not sure exactly how they play together. Like Giannis could try to play like this supercharged version of Aaron Gordon at the dunker spot, but then when Giannis is bringing it up, how does that work on like fast breaks? And you for sure stagger their minutes, so you'd have like the Giannis lineup, the Jokic lineup, where you each carry their individual teams. And I think it'd just be so interesting to see what I think are the two best players in the world play together, and that's why it's so much fun with this trade. The Bucks also like getting Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr. You stay decent, or at least you're not great, but then I think you can flip Aaron Gordon for more picks, Michael Porter for more picks, Christian Brown, whatever, where you could get a lot of picks in this haul. Ultimately, probably not enough for Milwaukee, but it's just really fun to think about Jokic and Giannis playing together. The Cleveland Cavaliers are up next. And this one is interesting. Like, if the Cavs just don't come close to beating Boston, right? Or maybe they get upset against Indiana, right? And they're like, man, we had this great regular season, but we still fell short. And maybe Evan Mobley doesn't play his best. Is it like Evan Mobley coming off his defensive player of the year, super young, and you trade him and a Okoro and a future pick? Like that for Milwaukee, getting Evan Mobley, one of the best young players in the league, that's a great pickup to remain decent and have like a star of the future. Probably going to be a top 15 guy in the league, maybe as soon as next year, already winning Defensive Player of the Year. And then if you're the Cavs to replace Mobley with Giannis, even as good as Mobley is, you obviously upgrade. And having Giannis, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, you would think you'd be even better. The Dean Wade piece of this is that to make this trade, the Cavs would have to first get under the apron. So to do that, they could just give Dean Wade away to a team like the Nets with cap space and then make the Evan Mobley trade. This one, now that I'm looking at, I don't know how unrealistic it really is. Like the Cavs would have to kind of fall apart, I think, to blow up what they have going. But if they do, this one's actually a really fun trade to think about, in my opinion. Then the Boston Celtics. This one, no chance of happening. There's no way the Celtics would trade Jason Tatum for Giannis, but it's really the only thing that even works. And you couldn't even do it right now. You'd have to wait like for Jason Tatum's till a certain day because he was recently signed to an extension. But the only other way you could make a trade for Giannis if you're the Celtics is basically trading away Porzingis or Holiday or maybe both or Derek White, right? One of those guys, because they're like $20 million over the second apron, which means they can't aggregate players in salaries. So you'd have to trade away those guys to save $20 million, then trade like Jaylen Brown and a pick or something for Giannis. And that was really complicated. So the only thing really is just Jason Tatum trade, which, it's interesting seeing two superstars be traded, but yeah, not going to happen. Then the Knicks, who I do think are going to give their best shot at getting Giannis, and they're going to offer a Towns, Tyler Coley, I don't really know how to say. I think it's Daddier, but I'm not sure. And this Wizards pick, which is, something. but I don't think that's going to be enough. So then I added in a third team so you could trade away Mikal Bridges to the Grizzlies, who maybe want a wing, and you get, two picks, Gigi Jackson as a young player, so that you add to this haul. So Milwaukee, what I talk about staying relevant, you get a Cat who's going to be like all NBA second team or something, so you're going to remain at least, somewhat competitive, and you got a decent amount of picks. The Knicks, you replace Cat with Giannis, you pair him with Brunson, you think you have a chance at a title. And the Grizzlies, you add another wing next to, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain, Zach Edey, and Jalen Wells would be back. So you would think they would be a little bit better. Obviously, three-team trades are very hard, and I don't know how realistic this is. I don't think it's the worst trade. Like, I think there's something here that could maybe be worked around. Maybe you get a few more picks from someone to entice the Bucks more. Because right now, I'm not I think the Bucks can probably still get more than this, even though maybe they think highly of Cat. But I think the Knicks could give it a shot, and it's a little bit more realistic than all the other ones in this tier, except maybe Cleveland. And now we get into the top two tiers, and these are the dark horse teams where he's probably not going to go, but not really because it doesn't make sense and not really because they don't have the package. It's probably because he specifically doesn't want to play in these places or, something along those lines. But if he doesn't rule them out, I could see these teams sneakily having a good Giannis package and it kind of fitting their timeline. And the first one I want to talk about is the Detroit Pistons. They have one of my favorite players in the league, Cade Cunningham, who I've been super high on all year. But it does look like they probably are going to fall short against the Knicks. Unfortunately, I thought they could maybe win that series, but that's neither here nor there. But I think Cade Cunningham next year, maybe some would argue this year, already a top 10 player in the league. I think for sure top 15, probably around 12. Next year, you expect him to take another step. You have to give up Asor Thompson and Jaden Ivey, your two best young pieces, and then Tobias Harris for salary, and then 3 future first round picks. But if I'm the Bucks, I'm like, okay, Asor Thompson has really, really ridiculous upside with being, probably the second most athletic player in the league, only to his brother. He's got the ball handling. He's going to be a great defender. If the shot comes along, he could be great for us. Jaden Ivey, when he was healthy, not sure how well he fit next to Cade Cunningham, but he proved he could be like a 20-point per game primary ball handler scorer. And Tobias Harris is a good player who's going to help keep us competitive, and we get all these picks. You're the Pistons. You acquire Giannis to pair with Cade to have arguably the best duo in the league, and you have a ton of cap space to bring back guys like Beasley or Tim Hardaway. You still have Jalen Duren. You can bring in another free agent, and you could be competing for a championship as soon as next year, realistically. And this is a dark horse that I think is really fun. I'd love to see it. I don't think Giannis would want to go to Detroit, and I'm not sure they'd want to maybe they would, but maybe they don't see themselves as close enough yet. But I think with how good Cade is, they could win a title next year if they did something like this. So they're a dark horse team for sure. Then the Memphis Grizzlies, who after getting swept by the Thunder, I think probably are looking to make a big change. So giving away 3 first-round picks, Gigi Jackson, Zach Edey, John Conchar, Brandon Clark, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr., a young player who's borderline All-NBA caliber, and really good defensively. That helps the Bucks' thing of staying competitive, like I keep mentioning. 3 picks, that's enticing. Zach Edey and Gigi Jackson, young guys who could be good for them. And then the Grizzlies, you replace Triple J with Giannis. You still have Ja. You still have Desmond Bain. You still have Jalen Wells. And I didn't include their pick this year. I'm not sure if that's because they don't have it or if I just had them keep it this year. I think they have their pick, but I could be wrong. But yeah, with Ja, Giannis, and Desmond Bain, you have the semblance of a really competitive team. And yeah, he's obviously an upgrade over Triple J, so this is a dark horse team for Giannis. Maybe they come up just short of other teams' packages, but this is certainly a decent package to offer the Bucks. Then I have the Utah Jazz, who is really just an insane amount of picks. And at first I was like, the Jazz, there's no reason to trade for Giannis. It doesn't make any sense. But then when I was doing it, so John Collins and Colin Sexton are good players who will be will be good for the Bucks, and you're not going to be a playoff team anymore. But if you get another player around them, those can be starters on a decent team in the Eastern Conference. Cody Williams, yes, he had a terrible rookie season, but he was drafted top 7 for a reason and mocked as high as 3 at some points in the season. We saw what his brother become. I think it's going to take time, but I still believe he can be a really good player. And Keontae George has shown flashes of the upside he has as either a one or a two who can score. He has issues defensively. Turnovers are an issue, but I think he's someone you could develop. And maybe they like Isaiah Collier more, swap them out. That's fine. And then you give all these picks, right? Including the 2031 Phoenix pick, which is super valuable, and all these other picks. And then the Jazz, you would have, let's say, Collier or Keontae George. I'll say Collier with Giannis, with Larry Markkinen, Jordan Clarkson still there, Taylor Hendricks coming back at some point, Walker Kessler still there, and I didn't even give up this year's pick. So say that's like a top guy. Say it's even Cooper Flag, and you have Cooper Flag with Giannis, with Isaiah Collier, with Larry Markkinen. Then like that's actually a legitimately really really good team potentially, and maybe the Bucks like want Cooper Flag, but I think this package is already really good without even giving up their top pick this year. So I think that's actually and I think the Jazz want to be good. Like I don't think they want to do a long rebuild. I think Danny Ainge wants to make a splash move, so they're a top dark horse team to get Giannis. Then the Toronto Raptors, which I don't think is as interesting as the Jazz or the Pistons, but they could give up Scotty Barnes, one of the better young players in the league, with Grady Dick and Jacoby Walter, two other young players, and 3 first-round picks. And now you have Giannis and Brandon Ingram instead of Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. You have RJ Barrett, you have Emmanuel Quickley, and you're probably better than the Bucks were this year. I don't love this just because I still don't think the Raptors would be really a threat to win the title, but on the Buck side, Scotty Barnes is going to be really good. He already is really good. And it's interesting. I just, not my favorite from this tier, but let me know if you guys like this trade. And then the Atlanta Hawks, I think, are a dark horse because Jalen Johnson and Zachary Rees-Sachet are two really good young assets. And you can give one of Milwaukee's swaps back in 2027, which is going to be really valuable to Milwaukee because then they can be bad and still have their pick, along with 3 other future firsts. And then you pair Trae Young with Giannis. Dyson Daniels is still there. The rest of the roster, you would kind of have to figure out. You would have a lottery pick this year to add to the roster. And, you have a couple of, like maybe a Kungwo still there. You certainly have to, patch up some holes. But pair Giannis with Trae Young, I think the Hawks could convince themselves that would be really, really good. And they could compete in the Eastern Conference. Personally, I think it'd be a little bit just like Dame and Giannis, but like a little bit worse. And I wouldn't necessarily make this move if I was them because I don't think it would lead to too much. But from their side, I could see what they could see in this, where they could talk themselves into it. And on the Bucks side, I think it's a pretty good package. Next up, the Portland Trailblazers, who I think have one of the better cores of young players who are just missing that star. And if you can get rid of Ayton's contract, and then Chris Murray's a young player, and Scoot Henderson, I think, is still a good young asset with 4 future first-round picks, and you can throw in the swaps and stuff. And then you have Giannis next to Denny, who's going to be one of the better role players in the league as a borderline star. Tumani Kamara's a great role player. Donovan Clingan's looks like he's going to be a really good center. And you still have a guy like Anthony Simons on the team. You could still flip a guy like Jerry and Grant to get more help. There's really Shaedon Sharpe still has a ton of upside, and maybe you'd have to give up one of those guys, like maybe you have to give up Kamara, but the semblance there of like keeping a lot of these young players and then just adding in Giannis as the guy and having this full core that can grow, I think it would actually be a really really great team, and I think they should go for it. Now I don't think Giannis necessarily wants to go to Portland. Like that's usually not a place people request a trade to or put on their list, but if they could pull this off, I think they just as soon as next year could be a top team in the Western Conference, like a top 4 seed. Finally, we have the realistic options. I think most likely the Giannis trade comes from one of these teams. First up, we have the Brooklyn Nets, who I can actually make the trade currently in the trade machine, but it's essentially a Cam Thomas signing trade with picks, or like a Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson and picks. And it's not like great, and I'm not fully sure it's enough, but they do have a ton of picks. Cam Thomas is decent. They have some other young players, Clowney, Derek Whitehead. And this would really be if Giannis really wants to go to Brooklyn because they have the cap space to build this team around him because they have a ton of cap space. And this is just like he's telling them, no, if you trade me, I want to go to Brooklyn, which I think is on the board. Then I could see the Nets being the move. The Spurs, I think you you have some picks. You have who going to be the rookie of the year, Stephon Castle, Jeremy Sohan, a nice piece, and Devin Vassell. It's a decent package. You could maybe even throw in a couple more young players if there's someone the Bucks like. And then you have Wemby, Giannis, De'Aaron Fox, which obviously could compete with a championship next season. It would be, I mean, that would be one of the best power forward center duos I've ever seen, especially defensively. Then the Orlando Magic, who you would have to get rid of Paolo or Franz, which maybe they don't want to do. Maybe you just want to have those two grow together as a duo, which I could see being reasonable. But if they did this, I would think they would get rid of Franz, Anthony Black, Goga Batadze, Tristan Da Silva, because Anthony Black's been a pretty good young player. Da Silva, take a flyer on him as a guy who can be a solid like stretch four, maybe a three, and then a bunch of picks. And that you for Milwaukee, you get your guy you're going to start your rebuild around in Franz Wagner. You get the picks and a couple other pieces. It's a good package. And the Magic pairing Giannis with Paolo, I don't know how they fit necessarily, but at least has super high upside if they can work together well. Then the New Orleans Pelicans, who I don't think people realize how realistic it is, but if you give up Zion along with what is like a top three pick, so say, I don't know, Dylan Harper or something, say it's like Zion, Dylan Harper, and then the ability for Milwaukee to tank getting 26 and 2020 swaps back. So you have a star of the future in Zion, a potential star like Dylan Harper or BJ Edgecombe, something like that, and you can tank. Like that's an insane package for Milwaukee. And then you get Giannis next to Trey Murphy, next to Herb Jones, and this infrastructure like CJ McCollum, like Giannis. If the Pelicans had Giannis, they have good role players around him to be really good. Then there's also the potential you don't even have to give up. Like if you're giving up a player like Dylan Harper and the ability to tank, there's a possibility you trade Zion to a third team, give the Bucks something else, and you acquire even more assets because this is maybe the best package anyone has. But these next two are pretty good as well. So the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think you guys probably expected them to be on here. And this one, I wanted to do that they wouldn't, they're probably not going to blow it up, give up J-Dub. So what could they do in that scenario? You give up Hartenstein, Dort for contracts, Topage and Dang as young players, and then just so many picks. Like this Dallas swap in 2028, super valuable. The Denver pick right now in 2029, even 2027, could be really valuable. The Utah pick in 2026 could be really valuable. So just great picks. Topage could be good. We haven't seen him play yet, and maybe Milwaukee just can't resist this many picks. And then the Thunder with Shea, Giannis, J-Dub, and Chet would maybe win 75 games. Then the Houston Rockets, who I think are probably my most likely team to do it right now, and you give them the Suns in 2027, super valuable. Suns or Dallas in 2029, ridiculously valuable. Şengün, an all-NBA player. Jabari Smith, who at the worst is a really great 3-and-D player, and then Reed Shepherd, who was just a top 3 pick in the draft. This is a great package for the Bucks to have good picks in the future as well as already a start of a decent team so they don't bottom out. And the Rockets add Giannis to Amen Thompson and Jalen Green and Ime Udoka as their coach. You still have Tari Eason. This would be a great team that could compete for the title next year. That is every team on the list. So let me know, what was your favorite Giannis trade? What was the most realistic? And do you guys think Giannis sets out this summer? I thank you guys for watching. Until next time.